Yes, you see, I have seen so many of his movies, and I realized that the actors that he used were the same actors that other directors used.
The image of Ingrid Bergman was that of a saint from the golden age of Hollywood, that bastion of artifice and manufactured glamour. She was a breathtaking exception, a face that burst with pure, unfiltered innocence and a talent that came as easily as you breathe. She was nothing less than an angel on earth, the wholesome Swedish girl that made it internationally as a star. The star that played a nun in The Bells of St. Mary's and the martyr Joan of Arc. She had a virgin image and with a pristine facade, and yet, far away from the glistening movie sets in the hallowed halls of power in Washington, D.C., the United States Senator stood in front of the nation and called her a horrible example of womanhood and a powerful force for evil. How did the world's most beloved actress become a public enemy, denounced from the floor of the U.S. Senate and then exiled from the country that once worshipped her? The story of what made Ingrid to burn down her perfect image, abandon her family, and throw away a record-breaking acting career is a lot more disturbing than any character she ever portrayed. It's a narrative of secrets kept for decades, a suffocating marriage that became a gilded cage, and an impulsive act that would go on to ignite her entire world. This wasn't a fall from grace. This was a rebellion from the beginning. Ingrid Bergman was made of tragedy and strength. She was born in Stockholm, and her early life was shaped by incredible loss. Her mother died when she was 3, and then her beloved father, photographer, and who had instilled in her the meaning of the camera's gaze, was gone by 12. Orphaned and bouncing around relatives, Ingrid did not find solace through people. She found solace through performance. That iceberg of childhood loneliness had evolved into the reservoir of her incredible emotional capacity as an actress, as well as the fierce and unshakable strength that she possessed. When she finally arrived in Hollywood in 1939, that strength was immediately tested. The legendary producer, David Olsnick, who was known for making stars from nothing, delivered his one-look stare and proceeded to lay out his non-negotiable demands. This is a perfectly acceptable course of protectionism. Margarita Canino had her hairline surgically altered to become Rita Hayworth. Selnick would tell her that Bergman sounded too German for audiences at war. She had eyebrows that were too bushy, her teeth weren't straight enough, and she wore too little makeup. He wanted to take her authentic edges down and turn her into the next cookie-cutter starlet. And he didn't know who he was messing with. In an act of jaw-dropping defiance for a young actress in a town run by men, she asked him to get lost. "I am Ingrid Bergman," she told him calmly, "and the American public would take her as she was, or she would take the next ship back to Sweden." Selnick was rendered speechless by her imperturbable conviction. He folded. Ingrid Bergman had arrived, and she was fully in charge. However, that strong-willed independence, which made her a star, was about to put her into a secret that she would keep for decades. Interacting with the most legendary leading men in Hollywood came with the territory. But when she found herself shooting scenes opposite Gregory Peck in Alfred Hitchcock's psychological thriller Spellbound, something was different. The typically ominous atmosphere cast by a Hitchcock movie was famously charged, and the chemistry between the two star-crossed lovers was positively electric. In her memoir, she described Peck in one powerful word: massive. It was a word heavy with unsaid meaning, suggesting something deeper than height and good looks. The public was left to speculate for many years it would take her death before Gregory Peck, who had been an honest family man to his death, finally broke his silence and told the truth. He revealed that during the memorable, claustrophobic, and intense filming of Spellbound, he and Ingrid had fallen deeply in love and were in the throes of a passionate and secret affair. The revelation hit like a bombshell, and their moments together on screen were suddenly changed with the weight of significance. The public had seen their professionalism in truth. They had stolen private time outside of takes, and a secret that was hidden in plain sight. For Bergman, it was more than a liaison. It was a taste of the emotional freedom she was yearning for, and it was a definite counterpoint to the man waiting at home. For her, as the man seeking to own her soul to the world. Her husband, Dr. Peter Lindström, seemed to be a good and supportive husband, a great Swedish neurosurgeon. But behind the scene of their glamour life, he had become controlling and manipulative. As Ingrid's star rose, so did the obsession to control every aspect of Ingrid's life. He was more than a husband. He was her self-appointed guard. He controlled the finances, controlled her contracts, and determined what roles she could take. He would send her long letters while she was on set, taking her apart, scene by scene, word by word. He systematically broke down her confidence. Even with the world giving her acclaim, she was in a gilded cage. Her fierce independence was being slowly suffocated. The passionate young woman who resisted a Hollywood mogul's power was now being psychologically dominated by her husband. She was smiling for the cameras while winning the Academy Award for the gaslight of film. Ironically, it was about a woman being convinced she is going insane by her manipulative husband. The art was echoing a painful reality. Privately, she was suffocating, and she understood she needed a way out. Her escape was not going to come from careful planning, but a single, impulsive act of artistic passion that would irrevocably alter everything. In 1948, sick of the polished superficiality of Hollywood, Ingrid Bergman found herself in a small movie theater, downing her popcorn while Latin cinemaphile Roberto Rossellini presented his Italian film, Rome, Open City. The unpolished, gritty, documentary-style realism of the film thrust Ingrid into a mini-revelation. It was real. It was dangerous. It was everything Hollywood was not. In a flash, she not only found herself amazed by the film, but mesmerized by the mind that made it. Then, in a moment that would change the course of modern celebrity history, she took the time to write a letter to Rosaline, a man she had never met. She identified herself as a Swedish actress who would have spoke English well enough had she not forgotten her German and couldn't speak a word of French, and then the fateful line in Italian, "I know one word, Timo, I love you." It was an act of incredible audacity. She offered to come to Italy and make a film with him when Rossellini, man with a reputation as a brilliant artist and a notorious womanizer, invited her to star in his next film. And what she watching is Tomediet backed, Tomediet in the film, changed to known as Demacher. Strongly, she felt no hesitation. She turned her back on Hollywood at the utter peak of her career, nixed her suffocating marriage, and faced the agonizing decision to leave her daughter Pia behind. She was choosing not just a new part or a new man. She was choosing a new life, a new kind of work, a new self. She was choosing freedom unknowingly and unceremoniously, with no idea it would cost her everything. The affair with Rossellini and getting pregnant, when it went off course, detonated a scandal so grand in the continuum of American sexual morality that I think it even shocked Hollywood. The American public that had idolized Rossellini as pure and wholesome could barely believe it had a personal betrayal. The backlash was quick, cruel, and puritanical. Religious groups organized protests and published editorials declaring their condemnation across the country. No one could have imagined the outrage would culminate with the highest levels of the American government. On March 14, 1950, at a time in which Senator Edwin C. Johnson of Colorado saw a political opportunity in the moral panic in which the country found itself, he stood on the floor of the U.S. Senate, railed against her in an astonishing and disseminated rant. Referring to her, a common mistress, he stated that out of the ashes of Ingrid Bergman, will grow a better Hollywood. It was an official public shaming, leaving her an American pariah overnight. Her films were boycotted, her name the essence of immorality, and she was practically blacklisted from the industry she had previously flourished in. The most painful consequence was personal. She was separated from her daughter Pia for 7 horrifying years. Her relationship with Pia now reduced to heartbreakingly brief and supervised phone calls. She had found her freedom at the unbelievable cost of public denouncement, professional disgrace, and personal heartache. Ingrid Bergman remained in Europe for 7 long years. Her Hollywood career, but a fading memory. The films she made with Rosaline were artistically audacious, but commercially failures, and their marriage, animated by volcanic passion, ultimately succumbed to professional and personal tensions. Then, a script for a film titled Anastasia came into her life. The character was a woman haunted by her past, her identity questioned by the world. The parallels to her own existence didn't end there. The studio, 20th Century Fox, was taking a tremendous leap of faith. Would America embrace its exiled angel? Her performance was stunning. It was imbued with a depth of personal experience around loss, identity, and endurance that no other actress would have been able to evoke, so stirring that it left audiences and critics aghast. The industry that shunned her had no choice but to acknowledge, once again, her talent and undeniable talent. On Oscar night, when the time for the announcement of her category was approaching, the audience felt the charged anticipation. When her name was read aloud, the stunned gasp and applause from the audience filled the theater, because she was still deemed too controversial to have made an appearance in person. Her dear friend and former co-star, Cary Grant, accepted the award on her behalf. Looking straight into the camera, he said, "Wherever you are, Ingrid, we congratulate you and wish you good luck." Was more than an award. It was Hollywood's formal public apology. Through many years, Ingrid Bergman was now facing her greatest and most private battle. Upon discovery of a lump in her breast, she was ultimately diagnosed with cancer. Yet, throughout the disease's onslaught on her body, she battled on in that noble fashion against surrender. She underwent multiple surgeries, debilitating treatments, and continued working, allowing only her closest circle to ever recognize how difficult it was. It was through this struggle that she presented one of the most body-wrenching and emotional performances of her entire career in Ingmar Bergman's Autumn Sonata. Outplaying a concert pianist who had abandoned her daughter and was reconciling the internal torment, being played out on screen was simply a mirroring of her own substantial agony in life. She poured herself into the performance. Her final role was perhaps her most defiant act. Frail, in almost constant pain and outwardly distorted by the sickness, she took on the role of a dying Israeli prime minister, Gula, with a community of females called Gula. Rather than cover her physical exhaustion, she employed it, hiding her pain in between the seams of the character. She spent her last measures of energy on the project, a final act of artistic will making her deservedly, anadisimously Emmy'd. Ingrid Bergman's life was a conundrum of adulation and condemnation, of great love, a profound loss. Ingrid was never the two-dimensional saint Hollywood had wanted her to be, nor the naive sinner which she had been denounced. She was something much more rarefied and powerful, a woman who risked living in love, unapologetically, even when it exacted the world. Studio moguls, acts of public humiliations, and illness could never secured her indomitable will that was evidenced as a young girl in Stockholm. Ingrid died with dignity in London on her 67th birthday, a poetic, defiant end to a life lived entirely on her own schedule. Her legacy is not just in the timeless films she left behind, but in her courageous, messy, and magnificent refusal to be anything other than herself. Her life was her greatest performance, and its magnitude was in every sense of the word truly massive.